The night is still. A soft wind brushes across a barren plateau, whispering through dry grasses that have stood here since before memory itself. Under the moonlight, the contours of the land rise gently into the shape of a mound, a modest swell of earth called Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill. For thousands of years, it was nothing more than a quiet presence on the horizon. Shepherds guided their flocks around it. Farmers avoided plowing too close, believing the hill to be an ancient burial ground. From a distance, it looked like any other knoll scattered across the Anatolian plain, weathered, silent, anonymous. But the earth remembers. Beneath this calm surface lay something older than the world as we know it, something that had been waiting, not for discovery, but for recognition. The camera drifts closer. Dust rises in the low light, and we begin our descent, not just into soil, but into time itself. It is 1994. An archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt walks among the limestone fields of southeastern Turkey. To most eyes, the ground seems ordinary, scattered with fragments of stone, shards of flint, the usual traces of ancient life. But one fragment catches his attention. A long, smooth edge, carved, not broken. Then another, and another. They are too deliberate, too exact to be natural. As Schmidt brushes away the dust, he realizes what he's seeing are not headstones or markers of a graveyard. They are the tops of something far larger, pillars arranged in circles, buried deep beneath the hill. When he begins to dig, history itself begins to shift. The radiocarbon dates that follow will shake every timeline ever written. 10,000 BCE. That is 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza, before Stonehenge, before the first city rose from clay. According to the textbooks, this should not exist. At that time, humans were still nomadic. They hunted. They gathered. They left behind no temples, no cities, no gods carved in stone. And yet here it was, a monumental sanctuary built with a precision and scale that defied everything we thought we knew. Göbekli Tepe was not supposed to happen, but it did. And its very existence asks a question that echoes through all of human history. What if civilization did not begin with farming, but with faith? To understand a place that breaks every rule of the past, we must first release our assumptions. Let the pace of your day slow to a halt. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel your breath settle, like dust returning to the earth. The noise of modern life fades, replaced by the soft hum of night insects and the far call of an unseen bird. Now, imagine you are standing on that Turkish hill. The stars above you are the same ones the builders once saw, glittering over an untouched world. There are no cities here, no roads, no written words, only stone, sky, and silence. Beneath your feet lies the memory of something vast, a message carved into the bedrock of human consciousness. To read it, we must dig, not just through layers of soil, but through layers of thought. So let the modern world recede. Feel the centuries peel away, one by one. And as the quiet of the night envelops you, join me as we begin to uncover what might be the very first chapter of who we are. History, as most of us learn it, begins with a simple story, a story so familiar that it feels almost inevitable. It tells us that humanity started as wanderers, that for hundreds of thousands of years we drifted across plains and valleys, following herds, gathering fruits, living lightly upon the skin of the earth. We built no monuments. We left only footprints, ashes, and bones. Our world was immediate. The next hunt, the next fire, the next sunrise. Then something changed. Somewhere, perhaps in the rolling hills between the Tigris and Euphrates, or along the green banks of the Jordan, a human being stopped to watch the wind ripple through wild grass. The seeds fell, and from them came an idea. What if we planted our future? That idea became the pivot of civilization, the birth of agriculture. From the first cultivated grains, every textbook tells us, came abundance. Abundance allowed stability. Stability allowed villages. Villages allowed cities. Cities gave rise to kings, armies, priests, and temples. It is an elegant equation, a sequence that moves in one direction, from survival to surplus, from hunger to hierarchy. In this vision, the story of humanity is a steady ascent. We hunted, then we farmed, then we believed. Generations of scholars have written this law as if it were gravity. It appears in every classroom diagram, a neat ladder of progress rising from stick-figure nomads to pyramids and writing. It makes sense. It flatters us. It tells us that order and reason come only after we've tamed the chaos of nature. But beneath that neatness hides an assumption so deep that few ever question it. That spiritual life is a luxury of the well-fed. That art, myth, and religion could only emerge once the stomach was full and the granary secure. And yet, when we peer back into the deep past, that assumption begins to tremble. Long before plows carved the soil, humans were already carving meaning. They painted bison in flickering torchlight on cave walls. They buried their dead with ochre and ornaments, as if guiding them toward another world. They sang around fires whose glow reflected in the eyes of people who could imagine what they could not see. The seeds of faith, it seems, were planted in the hunter's heart, not the farmer's. Still, the law of history persisted because it explained everything we could measure: architecture, pottery, tools, trade. It provided comfort in its simplicity. Progress became a line, and we placed ourselves proudly at the top. The archaeologist's spade, however, has a way of revealing truths that words cannot tidy. Beneath the soil lie exceptions, and exceptions are dangerous things. They whisper that the world was never as orderly as we think. The 20th century gave us one such whisper when excavations in Jericho and Cataluco suggested organized life before written history. But even these discoveries fit within the old framework. They were farming communities, after all. And then came a hill in southeastern Turkey, a hill that refused to obey. To understand why it matters, imagine the orthodoxy once more. 1. Nomads, small, mobile bands moving with the seasons. 2. Agriculture, the taming of plants and animals, creating surplus food. 3. Settlements, people staying put, building permanent homes. 4. Religion, organized belief arising from the need to explain life's mysteries. 5. Monuments, temples, tombs, and cities, expressions of complex society. This was the chain of cause and effect, clear, logical, sequential. Break one link, and the story collapses. So when archaeologists uncovered a site that seemed to reverse the order entirely, it was not just a discovery. It was an anomaly. And anomalies, in science and in history alike, are cracks in the surface of what we think we know. Because if a temple could exist before farming, if massive stone circles could rise from the hands of people without cities or rulers, then the entire structure of the human story had to be rewritten. But before that rewriting, before the astonishment and debate, we must dwell for a moment inside the mindset that reigned for centuries. The law of history was not born from arrogance. It was born from evidence, or what little evidence we had. The first civilizations we could see were the ones that left cities behind. Uruk, Sumer, Egypt. They built with stone and clay. They wrote on tablets. They left records. The hunter-gatherers left almost nothing. It was easy, almost irresistible, to assume they were less organized, less intelligent, less human. This narrative shaped more than archaeology. It shaped philosophy. It told us that consciousness evolved alongside complexity, that meaning is a byproduct of material comfort. We can hear its echo in modern life. Progress measured by production, success by construction. We believe we advance because we build, and we build because we can afford to dream. But what if dreaming came first? What if, Long before we learned to store grain, we learned to store stories. What if the impulse that drove us to raise temples was not a sign of leisure, but of longing? The law of history was elegant, yes, but like all elegant laws, it depended on silence. It required that the world before farming remain a blank page. Only then could the neat narrative unfold. That silence would not last. In the dry heat of Anatolia, on a mound known as Göbekli Tepe, something ancient waited beneath the soil, older than the pyramids, older than pottery, older even than the idea of the village. When it finally surfaced, the quiet equations of history would begin to crumble. Because this place, this so-called Potbelly Hill, would reveal that the first monumental architecture on Earth was not built for kings or for crops. It was built for belief. And in that revelation lies a question powerful enough to turn the entire timeline of civilization upside down. But for now, let us linger on the old world's last certainty, the tidy law that once defined us, before we let it break. For only when the known story dissolves can we begin to glimpse what truly happened on that hill 12,000 years ago, when humanity took its first step not toward survival, but toward the sacred. When Klaus Schmidt brushed away the first layer of dust on that Anatolian hill in 1994, he did not just uncover stone, he uncovered a paradox. What rose from the earth at Göbekli Tepe should not have been possible. By every established measure of history, this place could not exist. And yet it did, vast, deliberate, magnificent. The excavation began with confusion. The site had no houses, no hearths, no signs of ordinary life. It was not a village. It was something else, something designed for gathering, for ceremony, for meaning. As the dig deepened, circular enclosures began to emerge, each one defined by massive T-shaped pillars standing in silent arrangement. Some reached over 5 meters tall and weighed between 10 and 16 tons. Each was carved from a single block of limestone and transported from quarries hundreds of meters away. A feat demanding precision, coordination, and faith in a shared purpose. There were no wheels, no beasts of burden, no metal tools. And yet, these hunter-gatherers carved monoliths so perfectly balanced that they still stand 12,000 years later. When the dating results came back, 9,600 BCE, the scientific world hesitated. That number was older than the invention of pottery, older than the wheel, older than the first evidence of agriculture. To put it simply, the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not supposed to be capable of this. And that is where the paradox begins. Because if Göbekli Tepe is what it appears to be, a monumental temple complex designed for ritual and worship, then our entire understanding of the rise of civilization is upside down. The old story says, first came farming, then came faith. But here, faith came first, faith strong enough to move mountains. Think about what that means. These were nomadic people, moving with the seasons, following the migrations of wild animals. They had no permanent dwellings, no government, no economy. And yet, they gathered, in their hundreds, perhaps thousands, to shape stone into meaning. They carved pillars in human form, stylized and abstract, with arms folded across their bodies and hands resting on their bellies, as if each were a living being, standing guard over the circle. And between them, carved in low relief, a menagerie of creatures: foxes, boars, vultures, scorpions, snakes, a chaotic bestiary of life and death. This was not a place of agriculture or trade. It was a theater of myth. And that realization unsettles everything we thought we knew about ourselves. The paradox can be stated simply, but its implications are enormous. To build a temple, people must come together. To come together, they must cooperate. To cooperate, they must communicate, plan, and sustain one another. That kind of social structure usually requires agriculture. But at Göbekli Tepe, it seems the opposite happened. religion created society. For centuries, we have imagined that material survival drives progress, that we invented gods only after we had grain. But here, the evidence whispers the reverse. Perhaps it was the longing for the sacred that first bound us to one another, and in that act of gathering, civilization was born. Imagine what such gatherings might have looked like 12 millennia ago. Across the dry plains of southeastern Anatolia, small bands of hunter-gatherers begin to converge. They come from miles away, guided not by trade routes, but by tradition. They arrive carrying food, stone tools, and stories. Fires flicker in the cold wind. Drums echo through the dark. In the torchlight, the T-pillars rise like silhouettes of giants. The people dance between them, chant around them, touch their carved surfaces as if invoking protection or remembrance. Perhaps they believed the pillars represented ancestors, the first beings who bridged the world of flesh and spirit. Perhaps they believed they stood in the center of the cosmos itself. And perhaps, as the ceremonies grew, the gatherings became too large, too consuming. The people needed to feed the builders, sustain the rituals. Maybe that need, the need to stay, inspired the first seeds of agriculture. Not the pursuit of comfort, but the pursuit of continuity. The paradox deepens. Civilization did not give birth to religion. Religion may have given birth to civilization. This reversal changes more than timelines. It changes identity. It suggests that the impulse to seek the divine, to find order in the unseen, is not a product of culture, but its cause. That humans did not invent meaning after survival. They survived through meaning. Schmidt himself often said, "First came the temple, then the city." It was a radical statement, and it remains one of the most poetic ever made by a scientist, because it implies that our truest foundation as a species is not technology, but transcendence. Göbekli Tepe is not just a site. It is a mirror, one that reflects how little we understand about our beginnings. It tells us that spirituality was not an accessory of civilization. It was its architect. And that behind every stone, every symbol, every circle of pillars lies a message. The human need to connect with something beyond ourselves precedes everything else. The paradox is not comfortable. It means that the history of progress might not be a story of intellect conquering nature, but of spirit calling us to build. It means that our ancestors were not simply evolving. They were remembering something ancient within themselves, something we may still carry. So the next time you look at those weathered stones, consider this. When we see Göbekli Tepe, we see the moment humanity looked up, not at the horizon, but at the heavens, and decided to leave a trace of that vision in the earth. They were not kings. They were not farmers. They were dreamers with stone tools. And somehow, those dreams were strong enough to reshape the world. To answer that, we must now move beyond the timeline and the paradigm. We must get closer. We must treat this site not as a monument, but as a meticulously kept archive, a first book written by humanity, its pages crafted from limestone. Each circle, each pillar, each carved relief is a sentence, a paragraph, a chapter in a story, older than any scroll or tablet. Our job, in the dim light of the past, is to learn how to read its script. We must listen to the whispers of the stone, to the echoes of hands that shaped it, to the silent voices that spoke without words. The carvings do not shout. They invite. They do not demand. They guide. Step closer. Imagine brushing the dust away with care, as Klaus Schmidt did. Feel the rough edges of the pillars under your fingertips, smooth from centuries of wind, but still bearing the precision of intent. Notice the subtle curves, the suggestion of arms, torsos, faces. There is a grammar here, a language of form and symbol that predates speech, a testament to thought made tangible. And the animals, the scorpions, foxes, snakes, vultures, etched in low relief across the limestone surfaces. They are not decorative, they are messages. They are warnings, stories, prayers, and memories cast into stone. They speak of fear and respect, of the cycles of life, of humans' place in a world at once beautiful and dangerous. We are not merely observing. We are reading. We are interpreting. Each pillar is a page. Each relief, a line of poetry or a note of history. The very layout of the circles, their spacing and orientation, is a chapter on ritual, on gathering, on the social bonds that bound people together long before cities, writing, or kings existed. To truly understand Göbekli Tepe, we must abandon the neat timelines and the comforting equations of progress. We must accept that civilization, in its earliest form, may have begun not with the plow, nor with grain, nor with permanent homes, but with faith. Faith carved into limestone. Faith strong enough to move mountains, or at least to shape them into monuments of memory and meaning. And so, our journey deepens. The spade, the brush, the careful eye, these are our tools, not merely of archaeology, but of comprehension. We must follow the traces left in stone, pursue the intentions of hands long gone, and learn the syntax of a language that speaks across 12,000 years. This is where we begin the forensic hunt for the echoes of human intent. Here, in the silence of Göbekli Tepe, we find not just ruins, but a story, a first book of civilization waiting to be read. And as we prepare to turn its pages, we leave behind the world of assumptions and enter the world of understanding, a world written not in ink, but in stone. The air above Göbekli Tepe is still, yet charged with a weight that is almost palpable. Centuries do not simply pass here. They accumulate, pressed into the bedrock, folded into the contours of the hill, whispered along the edges of each stone. To the casual observer, the site appears silent, even lifeless. But to those willing to look, to those willing to listen, it speaks, softly, insistently, like a heartbeat beneath the soil, a pulse of memory reaching out across 12 millennia. We must begin our forensic hunt not with dates, not with timelines, not with the linear progression of civilizations. These tools, as useful as they are, cannot reveal the essence of Göbekli Tepe. The mound is not merely a historical site. It is a carefully preserved archive of human intent. Here, beneath layers of soil, lie traces of thought, ritual, and imagination, tangible yet abstract, monumental yet intimate. This is humanity's first book, older than any written record. Its pages are massive stones. Its sentences are etched in low relief. Its paragraphs are composed of circles and spatial arrangements that defy the ordinary. Unlike a conventional book, it cannot be read sequentially. Its meaning is multi-layered, folded across space and time, and requires patience, attention, and humility to decipher. We approach it as detectives rather than historians. Each incision, each line, each subtle angle is a deliberate choice. Each mark communicates intention, ritual, or social order. The placement of the stones, the curves of the enclosures, the distances between massive blocks, all are part of a carefully designed language, a choreography of human thought-made material. This is no casual design. The builders of Göbekli Tepe, hunter-gatherers without cities or governments, sculpted meaning into the landscape itself. Every decision, what to carve, where to place it, how to orient it, conveys thought, belief, and worldview. Even the absence of structures, the open spaces between stones, tells a story of movement, gathering, and focus. Reading Göbekli Tepe requires imagination as much as observation. It does not chronicle trade, conquest, or politics. It documents belief, ritual, and the structuring of human experience around meaning rather than necessity. Its architecture encodes social cooperation, spiritual concern, and collective memory. The stones are not inert. They are active participants in the communication of ideas, witnesses to ceremonies, and silent teachers of human creativity. The very organization of the site suggests deliberate planning. Circles of stone, enclosures, and subtle alignments create patterns, guide movement, and mark significance. They speak of humans bound together by shared understanding, by common vision, by something beyond immediate survival. They whisper of long journeys to gather here, of shared labor, and of a purpose greater than any one individual. To read these stones, one must cultivate a deep patience. Unlike written records, the message is not linear or direct. Symbols recur, motifs echo, spatial relationships repeat, and yet nothing is exactly the same. The site is layered. Older enclosures buried beneath newer ones, carvings partially obscured by time, deliberate acts of preservation and creation intertwined. It is a text that demands careful interpretation, a code that can only be deciphered through sustained attention and reflection. This forensic approach is not idle curiosity. It is an act of reverence and humility. It acknowledges that these were not primitive people, but deliberate observers of the world, capable of abstraction, imagination, and coordination. Their tools were simple, yet their vision was profound. Every mark is intentional, every circle meticulously conceived, every placement a statement about what mattered to them. Here is the paradox: monumental effort without cities, monumental form without rulers, monumental purpose without written law. This is a society organized around belief rather than convenience, around ritual rather than agriculture, around vision rather than mere survival. It challenges the neat narrative of human progress that historians have long taught. First farming, then settlement, then religion, then monument. Göbekli Tepe suggests a reversal. Faith may have preceded agriculture, ritual may have structured society, and vision may have birthed community. Our task is to uncover the reasoning behind these choices, to trace the human impulse embedded in stone, to learn the language of form, symbol, and intention. The site is not a relic to be catalogued. It is a message, a text, a call across millennia. The stones do not merely record history. They communicate purpose, identity, and the very essence of being human at its dawn. To approach it, we must relinquish the comfort of assumption. We must see not only with our eyes, but with imagination and empathy, ready to question the accepted sequence of history itself. Each circle is a paragraph, each stone a sentence, each motif a word whose meaning must be inferred. The layout, the rhythm, the orientation of enclosures, all are deliberate choices, encoded instructions for understanding, participation, and reverence. Every excavation, every careful brushing of dirt, every mapping of the enclosures is a step in translation. Archaeology becomes literacy. Measurement becomes interpretation. Discovery becomes understanding. Each layer of soil removed, each fragment revealed, each carved surface exposed, brings us closer to decoding the intentions of people who lived 12,000 years ago, yet whose thoughts, hopes, and beliefs echo still. Göbekli Tepe is not a single story, nor a simple one. It is a complex, layered text, preserved in stone, waiting for patient reading. It is a message written by people who understood the power of permanence, the urgency of ritual, and the necessity of communal vision. Its language is spatial, symbolic, and profoundly human. And so our forensic hunt begins, not with dates, theories, or hypotheses, but with the stones themselves, their presence, their silence, their unyielding testimony. They contain the echoes of humanity's earliest ideas, encoded in stone, waiting for eyes capable of reading them. To understand the people of Göbekli Tepe, we must first learn to read their script, deliberate, silent, monumental, and imbued with meaning that transcends time. As we prepare to move closer, to focus, to study the first signatures of their intent, we enter a space where every stone is a teacher, every circle a lesson, every carving a word. The forensic hunt will demand attention, patience, and imagination. But the rewards are immense. The first whispers of civilization itself, preserved in limestone, calling across the millennia to anyone willing to listen. The circles rise from the earth like giants awakening from a long sleep. The T-shaped pillars stand tall, silent and imposing, each one a sentinel carved by hands that knew neither wheel nor metal, yet commanded stone with uncanny precision. They are not mere supports for a roof, nor markers of property, nor crude memorials. They are beings, abstracted and anthropomorphic, standing in quiet testimony to human vision. Look closely. The pillars are immense, 5 meters or more, each weighing 10 to 16 tons, carved from single blocks of limestone. They are arranged with exacting care in circular enclosures, and the spacing between them is deliberate, guiding movement, defining space, and marking significance. Their presence dominates the hill, yet their arrangement invites reverence, awe, and careful observation. And then there are the hands. Each pillar has arms folded across the chest, fingers etched with surprising clarity. The sculptors took care to render the limbs in stylized precision. Arms cross the torso, resting just beneath the shoulders, in a pose that is at once protective and ceremonial. There is rhythm here, repetition across pillars, yet no two are exactly alike. Each pair of hands seems to gesture differently, some calm, some alert, some folded in silent benediction. They are a language of touch rendered in stone, a message to those who stood before them, calling for respect, reflection, and understanding. Notice the loincloths, simple, abstract, yet purposeful. They mark the body as human, while simultaneously stylizing it, abstracting it from mere flesh. The tangas are etched in low relief, draped around the hips, folding naturally over the stone. They emphasize form, modesty, and presence. Even in abstraction, the sculptors preserve the essence of human dignity. These garments are not utilitarian. They are symbolic, bridging the tangible and the spiritual, hinting at identity, ritual, and the delineation between the sacred and the mundane. The pillars' torsos, broad and tapering, evoke strength and stability. But within this physicality lies an ambiguity. They are human, yet not entirely so. The abstraction transforms them into entities that exist between the material and the divine. They are guardians of space, markers of ritual, and silent witnesses to the ceremonies performed in their midst. In the flickering torchlight of 12,000 years ago, they must have seemed alive, monumental presences around which humans gathered to enact the mysteries of their time. Each pillar carries its own individuality. Some are smooth, others bear low reliefs of abstract symbols, lines, circles, and patterns whose meaning we can only begin to decipher. The sculptor's hands are evident in every curve, every indentation. One can imagine the labor. Teams of people levering, chiseling, and lifting each massive block, guiding it into position with ropes and wooden supports, all without metal tools, all without wheels. The sheer human effort involved is staggering, yet infused with purpose. This was not mere construction. It was devotion. And yet, despite their size and weight, there is elegance. The T-pillars balance precisely, their forms harmonizing with the curves of the enclosures. They create a rhythm in space, a cadence of monumentality that is at once overwhelming and intimate. To stand among them is to feel both the humility of smallness and the inspiration of participation in something larger than oneself. Some pillars bear additional marks, abstract hands, etched patterns along the sides, subtle notches at precise intervals. These are not decorations. They are signals, instructions, or memory markers. Perhaps they guided ritual. Perhaps they encoded knowledge. Perhaps they were reminders of lineage or cosmology. In every detail, there is evidence of planning, intelligence, and intent. Every choice was deliberate. Every line speaks to a mind capable of abstraction, of vision, and of faith. The pillars are not uniform. Their variations hint at hierarchy, emphasis, or different roles in the sacred space. Some tower above the others, commanding attention, while smaller or shorter pillars occupy the periphery. They may represent different entities, different ancestral spirits, or different stages of ritual importance. There is poetry in the arrangement, a choreography frozen in stone, a dialogue between monoliths that speaks across centuries. The hands folded across the torsos suggest a posture of contemplation, perhaps a posture meant to communicate to the living. Fingers, though abstracted, suggest gesture. They might indicate guidance, warning, blessing, or vigilance. Arms in stone mimic the flexibility of the human body, yet they remain eternal, unchanging, and silent. And in this silence lies power, the quiet insistence that those who enter this space are participating in something larger than the immediate, something that transcends time and survival. Even the gaps between pillars are significant. The spaces form concentric patterns, defining the circles not only by stone, but by emptiness. It is in the intervals that movement, ritual, and attention are guided. People would have walked these spaces, circled the pillars, paused at thresholds, every step choreographed by the placement of stone. The architecture itself instructs behavior, evokes emotion, and imposes a rhythm upon human bodies moving within its geometry. The T-pillars are the first visible signature of Göbekli Tepe, the most immediate evidence of human intent carved in stone. They are abstract yet expressive, monumental yet approachable, silent yet communicative. They teach us about collaboration, about vision, and about faith. They hint at the social organization necessary to lift, carve, and arrange them. They remind us that these were humans, ordinary in their biology, extraordinary in their collective imagination. In imagining the builders, we see a network of people arriving from miles away, carrying food, tools, and stories. They work together in the chill of the Anatolian plain, chiseling limestone, raising pillars, and shaping meaning. Fires flicker. Voices chant. Hands touch stone as if invoking presence, respect, or remembrance. The pillars are not simply objects. They are participants, partners in ritual, witnesses to devotion, anchors of shared purpose. To stand among them is to feel the tension between permanence and impermanence. The stones endure while human bodies and voices fade. Yet the human intent, encoded in their arrangement, remains, waiting to be read, understood, and appreciated by anyone willing to pay attention. The T-pillars are a testament not only to the skill of their creators, but to the values, beliefs, and aspirations that shape their society. And as we study them, we realize that the T-pillars do more than represent humans. They embody an idea. The human figure is abstracted, universalized, elevated. The folded arms, the loincloth, the proportion of torso to height. Each detail is deliberate, a balance of abstraction and familiarity, power and restraint, presence and humility. In their silence, they ask a question that echoes across millennia. What does it mean to be human in a sacred space? The stone circles are alive with shadow. Not the shadow cast by the moon, but a shadow older than memory, etched in limestone, a record of fear, respect, and the unseen forces that stalked the minds of early humans. Between the T-pillars, carved in low relief, lies a menagerie unlike any pastoral idol of later civilization. Here is not the gentle sheep, the docile cow, or the tame dog. Here is the dark zoo, predators, scavengers, and creatures that remind the observer of mortality, power, and the capriciousness of life itself. Foxes crouch in silent readiness, tails curled, ears alert. Wild boars snout the earth, fierce and unyielding. Snakes coil along the pillars, their sinuous forms threatening, hypnotic, almost ceremonial in their placement. Scorpions cling to the limestone, stingers poised, capturing the tension of the moment when hunter becomes prey. And then there are the birds, not birds of song, but vultures, ever present, ever watchful, their wings spread, their eyes fixed upon the circle. Among all these creatures, none is more enigmatic, more potent, more urgent than the vulture stone. Pillar 43. Its relief dominates its enclosure, a tableau of symbolism so precise, so cryptic, that scholars have debated its meaning for decades. The vulture stretches across the pillar in a dramatic arc, talons extended, head bent, wings carefully rendered to suggest both flight and dominance. Beneath it, abstract glyphs and lines, carefully positioned, seem to encode knowledge, astronomical, calendrical, perhaps even catastrophic. Some researchers see in this pillar a record of the younger Dryas, a sudden return of ice that gripped the earth in a deadly embrace. Others see the vulture as a mediator between the living and the dead, the material and the spiritual, a symbol of transition, transformation, and transcendence. The reliefs are precise, deliberate, almost ritualistic. They are not decoration. They are warnings, teachings, prayers carved in stone. Each creature is chosen for its power, its ability to evoke awe and fear. Here, humans confront mortality directly, dramatizing the eternal struggle between predator and prey, survival and extinction, life and death. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were not naive. They knew the fragility of existence, and they immortalized it in stone. The animals are placed in dynamic tension. Scorpions flank vultures. Lions lurk in corners. Snakes slither along the edges. Spiders crawl across surfaces in abstract patterns. The arrangement is not random. It is a choreography of danger, a deliberate encoding of the world as it is feared and respected. This is not pastoral life idealized. It is life acknowledged in its rawest, most primeval form. Some scholars suggest that the dark zoo reflects a shamanistic worldview. The builders may have perceived a hidden order to existence, one where humans interacted with spirits, ancestors, and cosmic forces. Each animal, each predator, may represent a power to be invoked, a force to be propitiated, a guide to the afterlife or the unseen world. The carvings are more than images. They are talismans, storybooks, and ritual tools, each line a trace of consciousness reaching into the unknown. Pillar 43, the vulture stone, is the pinnacle of this expression. Some see in its arrangement an early star map, a recording of celestial events, a warning of environmental catastrophe, or a memorial to those lost. The vulture, a scavenger of the living and dead, mediates between worlds. It is both messenger and witness. The stylized bodies of other creatures around it seem to revolve toward its authority, acknowledging its dominion and amplifying the gravity of its presence. The vulture stone is a guidepost in more than one sense. It instructs ritual behavior, marks cosmological understanding, and codifies the interplay between humans and the forces that surround them. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were engaged in a profound act of observation, of nature, of mortality, of the sky above, and of the unseen world that shaped their fears and hopes. In this stone, the sacred and the terrifying converge, and the observer is reminded that early humans lived in a universe far more immediate, intense, and perilous than our sanitized modern imaginations allow. The dark zoo does not merely decorate the pillars. It transforms space into a theater of cosmic and earthly forces. To enter a circle is to enter a living narrative of existence, where humans are participants, witnesses, and learners. The carvings teach the observers to respect the world, to honor the power that surrounds them, and to understand their place within a web of life and death. It is education, ritual, and philosophy, all carved in stone. And yet, there is elegance in the terror. Each animal is stylized, abstracted, yet instantly recognizable. The sculptors achieved balance between realism and symbolism, fear and reverence, permanence and the ephemeral. There is movement in every relief, rhythm in every curve, tension in every stance. They are alive in stillness, speaking across 12 millennia to the mind capable of seeing beyond form to intention. The pillars themselves, T-shaped and anthropomorphic, frame these creatures. Humans and animals share space, coexisting in a deliberate dialogue. Arms of the pillars fold over torsos, as if observing the surrounding fauna, integrating human presence with the world of power and danger. The placement suggests hierarchy and narrative. Human figures interact with animal forces in ways that are deliberate, meaningful, and ritualized. The Dark Zoo reminds us that spirituality is not abstracted from the real world. At Göbekli Tepe, belief is grounded in observation, survival, and respect for forces beyond human control. Predators and scavengers are teachers, ancestors, messengers, and witnesses. The carvings serve as a guide, a caution, a meditation on mortality, and a bridge to the transcendent. As we linger on the vulture stone, it becomes clear that Göbekli Tepe is a manuscript written in limestone, with chapters encoded in every pillar and relief. The Dark Zoo is a central theme, the acknowledgement of danger, the negotiation with mortality, the ritualization of cosmic order. Here, humanity is shown at its most aware, most reverent, and most daring. They faced fear not by fleeing, but by immortalizing it, transforming threat into narrative and chaos into ritual. In imagining the builders, we see hands chiseling stone under torchlight, eyes following the shadow of a vulture in flight, hearts aware of the fragility of existence. They carved animals not to conquer them, but to honor them, to encode understanding, to create a shared language of power, danger, and respect. Every pillar, every relief, every line is an echo of intention, an act of devotion, and a record of consciousness reaching beyond the immediate into eternity. The Dark Zoo is not a menagerie. It is a philosophy. It is a reflection of the human mind, confronting the forces of nature and the mysteries of the cosmos. It teaches that religion at Göbekli Tepe was not comfort for the settled, but courage for the wandering, guidance for the uncertain, and ritual for the unknown. Pillar 43, the vulture, dominates this philosophy, reminding us that some knowledge comes from observation, some from reverence, and some from the courage to carve what cannot be tamed. The soil of Göbekli Tepe holds a secret deeper than the stone itself. Not only was this temple carved, raised, and revered, but it was also deliberately buried. The act was not hurried, not incidental, not a result of conquest or neglect. It was intentional, meticulous, laborious, purposeful. For reasons still debated, the builders chose to entomb their own creation beneath tons of earth and debris, sealing their work from view, preserving it for posterity. Imagine the effort required. Each circular enclosure, each T-pillar, carefully erected, surrounded by carvings of humans and beasts, had to be covered. Stones, soil, rubble, all had to be transported, placed, and compacted. There were no machines, no metal tools, no beasts of burden, only human hands, organized labor, and a commitment so profound it echoes across 12,000 years. Why would a culture invest such monumental energy not only to build, but to bury its own sacred space? Some archaeologists suggest that it was an act of sanctification, a ritual closure that preserved the sacredness of the site. Others see it as a practical response to social change, a way to protect the temple from natural erosion or human interference. Whatever the reason, the act transforms Göbekli Tepe from a mere construction into a deliberate archive, a repository of collective memory. The burial itself was structured. Soil was layered with care, not dumped haphazardly. The topography of each circle was respected. In some cases, new, smaller enclosures were erected atop the buried circles, creating a palimpsest of ritual and architecture. The past was honored even as the present moved forward. Time itself became an element of design, a dimension that was manipulated, shaped, and curated. This practice challenges everything we assume about early humans. A nomadic culture, capable of organizing labor for construction, is now also capable of envisioning preservation, legacy, and history. They were not building for immediate utility or personal gain. They were shaping memory, encoding meaning for generations they could not know. The earth became both medium and message, a guardian of the sacred, a testament to foresight and reverence. The meticulousness of the burial suggests an understanding of permanence and fragility. They knew that stones, even massive monoliths, are vulnerable. They understood that culture is ephemeral if left exposed. So they covered the temple, protecting not just the physical pillars, but the stories, the beliefs, and the rituals they represented. It was a time capsule, a deliberate act of cultural inheritance. Walking among the buried circles today, one can sense the deliberate absence, the weight of what is hidden beneath. Archaeologists brush away soil and uncover fragments, but each revelation is only partial. The buried enclosures tease us, hinting at completeness just beyond our reach. This interplay between revelation and concealment may have been intentional, part of the ritual itself. To bury a temple is to acknowledge mystery, to recognize that some knowledge is sacred, meant to be approached with patience and humility. The act of burial also reframes the temple in temporal terms. It is no longer only a site of the present, it is a site of memory. Layers of soil, carefully placed, are like chapters in a book, each telling a story, each preserving a moment in time. To excavate Göbekli Tepe is to read these chapters in reverse, to move backward through intention, belief, and labor, retracing steps that were meant to endure long after the hands that carved the stone were gone. There is poetry in this act of concealment. The builders, having poured their lives into the stone, chose to step back, to allow silence to take over. The temple, with its T-pillars and dark zoo, became dormant, waiting for discovery. And yet, in this dormancy, the site was not dead. It was preserved, alive in potential, patient, enduring. Beneath the mound, the echoes of ritual and devotion waited quietly, as if sleeping, until eyes and hands of the future would awaken them once more. Some researchers suggest that the burial may have been ritualistic closure, a symbolic act of completion. Perhaps each circle represented a cycle of life, and burying it was a way to honor that cycle, acknowledging that every beginning contains its end. Others see it as an act of protection, a means to safeguard the sacred from time itself, to prevent the knowledge and intention embedded in stone from being lost. Regardless, the implication is profound. These early humans were capable of abstract thought, capable of planning, capable of reflection on legacy and mortality. The deliberate burial challenges modern assumptions about history and progress. We tend to measure human sophistication by technology, by writing, by cities. But here is evidence that complexity can exist in absence of all three. Organization, foresight, ritual, and symbolic thinking were present long before agriculture or metallurgy. Göbekli Tepe reminds us that the cognitive and spiritual capacities of humans are not dependent on material advancement. They can flourish independently, driven by faith, awe, and imagination. When we observe the buried circles, we are confronted with another paradox. They are both complete and incomplete. The builders left behind a structure that is simultaneously visible and hidden. The very act of covering their work with soil transformed it into a living question, a riddle for the future. And as archaeologists dig, they must not only interpret stone and soil, but attempt to read intention across millennia. 2. Understand a worldview encoded in both what was revealed and what was deliberately concealed. Göbekli Tepe, in its deliberate burial, teaches a lesson that transcends archaeology. It tells us that meaning is not always immediate. It suggests that understanding often requires patience, humility, and a willingness to accept that some knowledge must remain hidden until the right moment. It underscores the depth of human consciousness and our capacity for foresight, for envisioning the future and shaping it with care and devotion. In contemplating the buried temple, we are invited to imagine the builders at work, not only raising pillars, but shaping legacy. We see them moving soil, carefully layering debris, perhaps chanting or observing ritual as they entombed their own creation. We are witnesses to a society that understood permanence in both material and immaterial forms, that valued memory as much as life, and that acted to protect what they knew was precious. The deliberate burial transforms Göbekli Tepe from a static monument into a dynamic archive. It is not simply a site to be studied. It is a story to be read, layer by layer, century by century. Each stone, each animal relief, each human figure is preserved within a cocoon of earth, waiting for those capable of reading its language. And as modern hands uncover these layers, they do more than reveal stone. They awaken echoes of thought, ritual, and intention that have slumbered for 12 millennia. Göbekli Tepe, through its deliberate burial, asserts that the sacred is not always loud or permanent in the obvious sense. Sometimes the greatest acts of devotion are quiet, hidden, and patient, waiting for the right moment in history to speak. And in that waiting, in that careful preservation, the builders communicated something timeless, that belief, ritual, and culture are worth protecting, even from the passage of time itself. To step back and consider the burial is to step into the minds of those who created it, to sense their reverence, their foresight, and their understanding of mortality and memory. It is to recognize that the impulse to preserve, to honor, and to encode meaning is as old as humanity itself. The temple was not simply built. It was curated, safeguarded, and entrusted to the earth. In the end, the deliberate burial of Göbekli Tepe transforms our understanding of early human intelligence, spirituality, and social organization. It is a testament to foresight, devotion, and the enduring power of belief. It signals that the story of civilization is not only about construction, agriculture, or conquest, but also about intention, memory, and the human desire to connect across time. The world 12,000 years ago was not the gentle Anatolia we imagine today. It was a land in flux, a planet still trembling from the edge of an ice age. Glaciers had retreated, rivers swelled with meltwater, and the climate shifted violently in pulses of cold and drought. This was the Younger Dryas, a sudden, brutal return to near-glacial conditions after the warmth of the last interglacial period. Imagine the skies darkened by storms, the wind carrying the sharp chill of winter far beyond its season. Forests receded, grasslands cracked. Herds of animals, once abundant, scattered or perished. The humans of this era faced uncertainty unlike any their ancestors had known. Survival was precarious. Every day could be a test of ingenuity, endurance, and luck. It is against this backdrop that Göbekli Tepe rises, impossibly and intentionally. Here, amid the chaos of climate and survival, humans undertook monumental construction. This is not an accident. There is an urgency, a tension, etched into the very stones. They were not building for comfort or trade. They were building for memory, for ritual, for the act of asserting meaning against a capricious world. Some researchers propose that the temple itself is a memorial, a commemoration of a cataclysm that humanity barely survived. The alignment of the pillars, the placement of symbols, the careful selection of animal reliefs, all may encode stories of survival, loss, and reverence. And one pillar, the so-called vulture stone, speaks most vividly. Carved with precision, its intricate arrangement of vultures, scorpions, and celestial symbols has been interpreted by some as a record of cosmic events, perhaps even a comet strike that may have triggered the Younger Dryas. Consider that, a single pillar as both monument and map, a stone tablet preserving the memory of a disaster across millennia. It is both warning and witness, a testament to the capacity of early humans to observe, encode, and transmit knowledge. Their understanding of danger, of the celestial, of the terrestrial, was intertwined. The pillars are not mere art. They are instruments of memory, a record of existence, under extreme conditions. To grasp the significance of Göbekli Tepe in this context, imagine the human mind confronting such a world. The cold, the scarcity, the uncertainty. It drives not only survival strategies, but spiritual inquiry. If life itself is fragile, the urge to connect with something beyond the immediate, something enduring, becomes profound. Religion, ritual, and the construction of sacred space emerge not from abundance, but from necessity, from a need to comprehend, to anchor, to persist in the face of forces beyond human control. In this light, Göbekli Tepe is no longer a curiosity or anomaly. It is a response, a human response to a cataclysmic epoch. Every T-pillar, every carved animal, every buried enclosure becomes a line in a story written in stone. A story of fear, resilience, and faith. The builders were not merely marking territory or expressing artistry. They were embedding knowledge, encoding ritual, and shaping a society capable of transcending the immediate struggle for survival. And the brilliance of their design is magnified when we consider the technology they possessed or lacked. No metal tools, no wheel, no draft animals. Only stone, flint, ropes, levers, and the collective will of hundreds, perhaps thousands of people. Yet they moved tons of limestone, shaped figures in abstract and anthropomorphic forms, and arranged them into ceremonial circles that still echo with power today. The Younger Dryas context reframes the temple as a site of urgency, almost as if it were a lifeboat for culture itself. In a world where climate could annihilate life with little warning, the act of constructing meaning became as vital as hunting for food. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe was a sanctuary, a place where the human spirit could assert permanence against an impermanent world. And yet, the more we dig, the more questions arise. Were the rituals a form of communal therapy, a way to cope with loss and anxiety? Was the temple intended to attract and unify dispersed groups, forging social cohesion amid uncertainty? Or was it an early observatory, a way to track celestial movements that foretold environmental change, giving humans a sense of order in a chaotic landscape? Each possibility points to a central truth. These were humans fully aware of their vulnerability, yet capable of abstract thought and long-term planning. They recognized danger, recorded it, and created mechanisms, both physical and spiritual, to navigate it. Faith and observation, ritual and architecture, memory and materiality were inseparable. Göbekli Tepe, in the shadow of the Younger Dryas, becomes a testament to the sophistication of cognition long before the rise of agriculture or cities. And here lies the profound paradox. The world outside was harsh, uncertain, and often hostile. Yet within the circles of T-pillars, human ingenuity and imagination flourished. The builders carved a sanctuary not merely from stone, but from fear, from awe, from the recognition that survival alone is insufficient, that meaning, memory, and the sacred are essential to enduring as a species. Even today, as archaeologists uncover the layers of soil and stone, the echoes of that epoch remain. Each vulture, each scorpion, each etched human form speaks across 12,000 years, reminding us that knowledge and belief can precede agriculture, that society can emerge not from abundance, but from shared purpose and shared reverence. Göbekli Tepe is not simply a temple. It is an archive of resilience, a record of cognition, and a monument to the enduring power of the human spirit in the face of existential uncertainty. A few miles from Göbekli Tepe, another hill rises silently from the Anatolian plain, Karahan Tepe. At first glance, it appears as modest and unassuming as its older sibling, yet beneath its surface lies a revelation equally profound. Recent excavations have revealed that Göbekli Tepe was not an isolated phenomenon, but the center of a far-reaching network of ritual sites spanning hundreds of miles. Karahan Tepe presents both similarity and divergence. Like Göbekli, it features circular enclosures and T-shaped pillars, yet here, the aesthetic is sharper, more severe. Phallic pillars rise boldly, emphasizing fertility and the cycle of life. The carvings are starker, almost raw. Predators and prey, humans and animals, abstract symbols intertwined with forms that hint at shamanistic practices. The art conveys urgency, movement, and a sense of purpose beyond mere decoration. This discovery reframes the scale of what we once considered prehistoric society. It suggests a civilization, lost, fragmented, and hidden beneath the soil, that was networked, communicative, and spiritually sophisticated. The builders of these sites were not isolated tribes improvising monuments. They were participants in a shared cultural and religious tradition, maintaining knowledge across distances, coordinating labor, and embedding meaning into stone across generations. Consider the logistics. Hundreds of people gathering in the open, carrying food, water, and tools, transporting massive limestone pillars, carving precise anthropomorphic and zoomorphic figures, arranging them in circles designed to reflect social and spiritual hierarchies. This was not happenstance. It was organized, deliberate, and deeply symbolic. Karahan Tepe mirrors Göbekli Tepe in design and philosophy, yet its differences hint at regional variation. A diversity of thought, ritual, and interpretation across this early network. The implications are staggering. It suggests that the impulse to gather for ritual, to encode belief in stone, and to forge community predated urban life, not just in Göbekli Tepe, but across multiple sites. Civilization, in other words, may have begun not with agriculture or cities, but with shared sacred purpose. These sites formed the first nodes of a cultural web, linking communities through the practice of faith, memory, and labor. The carvings themselves offer clues to this lost communication. At Karahan Tepe, certain motifs repeat: vultures, snakes, foxes, abstract celestial symbols, echoing the iconography of Göbekli Tepe. It is as if a visual language, coded in stone, spread across the landscape, allowing ideas, beliefs, and perhaps even warnings to travel between dispersed groups. These were humans who thought not only of survival, but of continuity, preserving meaning in the face of time and mortality. And just as Göbekli Tepe was intentionally buried, so too are elements at Karahan Tepe, carefully interred beneath layers of soil. This deliberate concealment suggests foresight, ritual practice, and a profound respect for the site's own sanctity. These were not merely gathering places. They were archives, repositories of culture and knowledge designed to endure beyond the lifetimes of those who built them. In essence, the existence of Karahan Tepe and other recently discovered sister sites transforms Göbekli Tepe from a singular anomaly into the heart of a networked civilization, hidden in plain sight for 12 millennia. It reveals a human past far more complex than textbooks had dared to imagine, a past in which belief, ritual, and community could mobilize hundreds of people to achieve feats previously thought impossible. The network of Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe, and their sister sites urges us to rethink the sequence of civilization itself. Faith before farming, ritual before urban planning, shared belief before hierarchy. With every new excavation, with every layer of soil removed, the soil of Turkey rewrites the first chapter of our story. We are realizing our past is far deeper and more complex than we ever imagined. If this journey to rediscover our origins resonates with you, consider subscribing to continue the exploration. It is a radical reversal of our assumptions, and it lays the groundwork for understanding the origins of society as an endeavor rooted in connection, meaning, and the sacred. Imagine the world 12,000 years ago. The plains of southeastern Anatolia stretch in every direction, dry, wild, and alive. Bands of humans move lightly across the land, following game, gathering roots, living day to day, hour to hour. There are no cities. There is no written word. Only movement, fire, and the soft hum of wind through grass. And then a hill rises in the distance. A hill unlike any other. Göbekli Tepe. It is more than a mound of earth. It is a destination, a point of convergence for tribes who have never met. Here, humans come together not to trade, not to conquer, not to survive, but to build faith. Picture them carrying stones, massive limestone pillars that weigh more than any one person could lift alone. Their hands are raw, their feet dusted with ochre and grit. They arrange the stones into circles, placing each T-shaped monolith with care, its arms folded across its chest, hands resting on the belly as if in eternal vigilance. The pillars are guardians, ancestors, embodiments of the sacred, watching over ceremonies that are yet to be fully understood. Around these pillars, carvings emerge, foxes crouching in ambush, snakes coiling, vultures poised in silent flight. Each image is precise, intentional, a message in stone. Perhaps these were warnings, perhaps prayers, perhaps maps to navigate both the land and the cosmos. Each mark carries meaning, a language of ritual, a visual poetry that binds the people to one another and to the unseen. As they build, the gatherings grow. Hundreds of people, perhaps even thousands, converge from surrounding hills and valleys. They bring food for the workers, tools for the sculptors, stories to share around the flickering firelight. And slowly, the act of gathering demands more. To sustain this ritual, people cannot roam freely. They begin to cultivate wild grains, not yet for bread, not yet for sustenance, but to ensure the continuity of the sacred labor. The temple comes first. The city comes after. Faith becomes the anchor. It is an inversion of every assumption we hold about civilization. Humans did not settle because they farmed. They farmed because they settled. Here, at the altar of belief. Close your eyes and imagine the ceremonies. Drums echoing across the plain, chants rising to the starlit sky, smoke curling in patterns that might mirror the constellations above. Men and women work side by side, building, carving, chanting. Children run between the stones, learning through observation and imitation the rituals that bind the community. Every gesture, every action, is a thread in the tapestry of emerging civilization. Consider the paradox. These were people without kings, without armies, without commerce. Yet they organized, coordinated, and executed feats of engineering and artistry that astound us today. They had nothing but stone, story, and devotion. And in those simple tools, they planted the seeds of everything that followed. The implications ripple outward. If faith could inspire such labor, such social cohesion, then perhaps every assumption about the rise of cities, kings, and empires must be reconsidered. Perhaps the first architects of society were not scribes or rulers, but dreamers and believers. Göbekli Tepe becomes then more than a temple. It is a catalyst. It is the spark from which the fire of civilization was kindled. Each stone is a testament to the human capacity for imagination, cooperation, and transcendence. Every pillar, every carving, every deliberate enclosure is a reminder that meaning can precede survival, that culture can emerge before comfort, that society can grow from devotion as easily as from necessity. And in this imaginative reconstruction, we begin to see the contours of a world long forgotten, yet not entirely lost. A world in which humans reached beyond the immediate, grasped the invisible, and shaped their own history, not as a linear progression from hunger to cities, but as a spiral of faith, creativity, and enduring purpose. Who were the builders of Göbekli Tepe? We see their stones, their carvings, their circles, but not their faces. We hear the echoes of their rituals, but not their voices. And yet, their presence is palpable, pressing against the veil of time. They were hunter-gatherers, nomads of the plains, yet they exhibited an understanding of coordination, purpose, and vision that feels almost modern. They communicated across distance, shared labor with precision, and created symbols capable of enduring millennia. They did not need a king to command them, nor a written law to guide them. Their authority was collective, their power spiritual, and their legacy eternal. It is tempting to wonder, were these people like us? Or were they a different branch of humanity, one that existed in parallel with the known evolutionary path, more attuned to the unseen than the material? Perhaps their intellect was not measured in tool-making or construction alone, but in imagination and devotion. Perhaps they possessed a form of consciousness that merged survival with transcendence. Every pillar, every carved animal, every deliberate enclosure hints at minds capable of abstract thought, of narrative, of myth. The T-shaped figures stand as guardians of both community and concept, while the bestiary, foxes, snakes, vultures, reflects an awareness of danger, of mortality, of the cycles of life. This is not mere decoration. This is philosophy etched in stone. Yet, the paradox persists. They lack the technologies we consider essential for monumental construction. No wheels, no metal, no large-scale farming. And still, they accomplished what we would struggle to replicate today. Their ingenuity was not mechanical. It was organizational and spiritual. Their motivation was not hunger, but meaning. We can see ourselves reflected in them, and yet they are profoundly alien. In their deliberate gatherings, in their devotion to the sacred, they challenge the very notion of progress as linear or material. They ask us to reconsider what it means to be human, to innovate, to build, to dream. Perhaps the lesson of Göbekli Tepe is not about ancestry in the genetic sense, but ancestry of spirit. These people remind us that the capacity for wonder, for ritual, and for collaboration existed long before cities and empires. That the first civilizations may have been shaped less by the need to survive, and more by the need to connect, to each other, to the earth, and to the cosmos. Standing before their stone circles, we are confronted with a mirror of possibility. Could we, if stripped of our assumptions and distractions, still organize around meaning, devotion, and collective purpose? The answer whispers across 12,000 years. Yes. The paradox of existence at Göbekli Tepe is both humbling and exhilarating. It is a reminder that human history is not a straight line of progress, but a tapestry woven from intention, imagination, and belief. The builders were not merely hunters. They were visionaries. They were not merely people. They were the authors of the first story ever written in stone. And it is here in this understanding that we prepare to bridge the past with the present, to consider not only what these people accomplished, but what else might lie beneath our feet, waiting to rewrite the story of who we are. Göbekli Tepe was found by chance. A humble hill, long ignored, revealed a history that textbooks had never predicted. And yet, for every potbelly hill uncovered, there may be dozens, hundreds, still hiding beneath the soil, silent witnesses to a past that refuses to be forgotten. Imagine the plains of Anatolia as they were 12,000 years ago. Now imagine the same impulse stretching across the globe, hidden beneath other hills, deserts, and forests. How many other civilizations might have arisen and vanished before leaving a trace? How many ideas, rituals, or structures remain buried, waiting for the spade of discovery to give them voice? The significance is profound. Our understanding of humanity's origins is incomplete. It has always been shaped by what survived, what was visible, what was written down. Göbekli Tepe reminds us that survival alone does not define legacy. Intention does. What people valued enough to carve into stone, whether god, animal, or ritual, has the power to outlast even empires. Every step taken on that hill is a step into an unrecorded world. Every pillar, every animal, every deliberate burial is an echo of human imagination, reaching through time to speak to us now. And it asks us a question as urgent as it is simple. What are we leaving behind? The present, too, becomes a landscape of potential. If one humble hill could conceal such monumental achievement, what else might be waiting, not only in the ground, but in our assumptions, our blind spots, our understanding of who we are? How much of our history is waiting for us to see it differently? Standing here, before the echoes of 12 millennia, we are invited to reflect. Civilization was not inevitable. Society was not linear. The impulses that shaped our ancestors, curiosity, devotion, imagination, remain with us still. The stones whisper that our capacity for belief, for collaboration, for wonder, has always been at the heart of humanity. Göbekli Tepe is both a relic and a challenge. It is evidence of what humans can accomplish when bound by purpose rather than by necessity. It is proof that the sacred can precede the practical, that devotion can precede structure, that the vision of a community can exist before its material foundation. And so, as we leave the plateau in our minds, consider this. Every hill might hold a secret, every mound a story, every unassuming landscape a history waiting to be rewritten. The past is not finished. It waits beneath our feet, patient, deliberate, and enduring. Now the speculation's quiet. Allow the truths carved into Göbekli Tepe to guide us into a calmer, deeper contemplation of what it truly means to be human. Our journey began on a lonely hill, a modest rise of earth that most would overlook. Yet on that Anatolian plateau, under the cold gaze of countless stars, we discovered the echoes of humanity's earliest ambition, a monumental sanctuary carved from stone, long before the first city, the first granary, or the first written word. We witnessed the T-shaped pillars standing in silent arrangement, guardians of memory and meaning. We traced the reliefs of animals, creatures fierce and delicate, embodying the fears and reverence of a people who understood the fragile dance between life and death. We saw the deliberate burial of these structures, a conscious act to preserve culture and intention for generations yet unborn. We felt the paradox of Göbekli Tepe. The first acts of civilization were not born from need, but from devotion. Faith came before farming. Ritual came before rule. Meaning came before monuments. The very order of human history, as we have been taught, had been rewritten beneath our feet. Through the soil of Göbekli Tepe, we glimpsed the birth of society not as a sequence of inventions, but as an impulse to connect to each other, to the unseen, to the cosmos itself. This was the first human endeavor that sought not simply survival, but transcendence. As we reflect on these revelations, it becomes clear that what we unearthed is more than architecture or iconography. It is the memory of consciousness itself, a blueprint of humanity's earliest imagination, still speaking across 12,000 years. And now, having traversed centuries, felt the weight of stone, and traced the first lines of meaning carved into limestone, we prepare to step even closer to the heart of that vision, to meditate on its implications, its philosophical resonance, and the quiet wisdom it offers to all who pause long enough to listen. Göbekli Tepe is more than the world's first temple. It is the first act of self-recognition, the moment humanity decided to see itself as separate from, yet connected to, the natural world. These stones were not raised for kings, for conquest, or for power. They were raised for the idea of society itself, for the recognition that humans could gather, imagine, and create meaning together. In every pillar, in every carved beast, in every carefully buried circle, there is a testimony. Civilization is born from intention, not from necessity. We see in these ancient enclosures that humans have always sought connection to each other, to the forces that shape existence, and to something greater than themselves. The T-pillars stand as silent witnesses to this truth, their arms crossed over bellies, their hands resting in quiet vigilance. Their very form a bridge between the human and the divine. They are more than statues. They are reflections of our first understanding that the material world alone does not satisfy the soul. The animal reliefs, fierce and primeval, speak of fear, respect, and power. They are not merely decoration. They are the language of survival and spirituality intertwined, a testament to the human mind's ability to render both chaos and order in stone. The vulture stone, Pillar 43, looms large in this narrative, a cosmic reference, perhaps a memory of catastrophe, a star map, or a calendar of human reflection. Its meaning is layered, dark, and deliberate, revealing a people attuned to both the seen and the unseen. Göbekli Tepe challenges our assumptions about progress. We are taught that civilization is a linear ascent, first survival, then surplus, then settlement, then belief. Yet here, we witness the reverse. Faith, collaboration, and vision gave rise to permanence, not the other way around. These were not passive dreamers. They were builders, planners, and visionaries whose legacy endures in silence. And perhaps that is the greatest gift of Göbekli Tepe. It reminds us that the human drive to leave a mark, to understand, to connect, and to create is timeless. The builders of this hill were not our ancestors only in blood. They are our spiritual predecessors, the first to see beyond the immediate, the first to craft society from intention. In contemplating this, we realize that history is not merely a ledger of events. It is a living dialogue between the past and the present, between intention and consequence, between what we can touch and what we can imagine. Göbekli Tepe is not merely a monument. It is a conversation that spans 12 millennia, inviting us to listen, reflect, and perhaps rediscover the impulses that first made us human. We look at the weathered stones and see not only the past, but ourselves. The impulse to build, to leave a mark, to look at the sky and ask why, is as old as humanity itself. The people who raised these pillars 12,000 years ago were not so different from us. They dreamed, they questioned, they sought meaning. Every hand that carved limestone, every footstep that brought stone from distant quarries, every ceremony performed beneath torchlight, these acts speak of a universal human desire to reach beyond the immediate, to connect with something greater than ourselves. Göbekli Tepe reminds us that the quest for understanding, the need for ritual, the search for order in a chaotic world is intrinsic. We are bound not just by biology or geography, but by curiosity and wonder. The spiritual and creative impulses that led to these monumental enclosures are the same forces that drive art, science, and philosophy today. Even in silence, the site communicates. The pillars do not shout. They do not demand. They stand as gentle reminders that human potential is vast, that our capacity to collaborate, imagine, and create has always existed. They whisper of a lineage not measured in bloodlines or empires, but in spirit, a heritage of intention, vision, and communion. And as we absorb this, we begin to understand a profound truth. The earliest civilizations were not defined by grain stores or palaces, but by their ability to dream together. Faith preceded cities. Meaning preceded hierarchy. Humanity, in its most essential form, began with the desire to reach beyond survival. Göbekli Tepe is a mirror. When we see it, we see the first architects of society, standing not in triumph over nature, but in reverent dialogue with it. They remind us that civilization is not only what we build, but why we build, and that every act of creation carries the potential to shape not just our world, but the consciousness of those who come after. As the night deepens over the Anatolian plains, imagine the quiet of that Turkish hill. The T-pillars stand silently beneath the earth, sleeping as they have for millennia. Their presence is patient, deliberate, and eternal. The wind stirs only gently now, carrying whispers of ceremonies long past, of voices and footsteps that have returned to dust. You can feel the weight of history dissolve, as if the centuries themselves are settling like soft soil around you. Breathe in the stillness. Let the chill of the night brush against your skin. The same wind that once touched the builders of Göbekli Tepe. Feel your heartbeat align with the rhythm of that ancient pulse, the pulse of imagination, devotion, and collaboration. For a moment, you are not merely an observer. You are part of the continuum of humanity, connected by the impulses that first drew people to this hill, that first inspired hands to shape stone into meaning. You are present in the silent testimony of faith and creation, in the spaces between the pillars, in the shadows that dance under torchlight. And as the quiet envelops you, let it become your own. The stones do not demand recognition. They offer reflection. The past does not press upon you. It invites contemplation. There is no rush, no conclusion, only the gentle, patient unfolding of awareness. In this stillness, let the vastness of time soften. Let the echoes of 12,000 years become a lullaby. Here, on a forgotten mound, the first acts of civilization breathe quietly. Their stories are yours to carry, not as lessons, but as memories of possibility, inspiration, and connection. This was another story in the endless river of time. From a modest hill in southeastern Turkey, we traced the first steps of humanity, not toward survival, but toward the sacred. We saw the T-pillars stand guard over memory and meaning. We read the menagerie of stone, the whispers of the dark zoo. We felt the paradox of civilization born from faith, not food, and imagined the hands that carved intention into limestone 12,000 years ago. Now, let the river carry you gently. Let the quiet of Göbekli Tepe settle over your thoughts, dissolving the noise of the day. In the stillness, you may hear the soft murmur of human curiosity, devotion, and imagination stretching across the millennia. A conversation that continues in you, now, in this moment. Good night, dreamer of ages. Let the stars above and the stones below guide your rest. And remember, if this journey through the depths of time and spirit stirred something within you, follow the channel, so you never miss the next expedition into the hidden corners of our shared past.